You are now listening to The Project. Where we stop at nothing to bring you the right facts on health, fitness, and psychology. Featuring some of the world's most experienced professionals so you can learn, lift, and live. With your hosts, Meg, Dr. D, and Mehdi.
Progress is better than perfection. That just blew my mind. Like, that's exactly what I needed to hear. Where I am is still in progress. There is no end point. It's not when I have this, I will do this. There is no such thing. You are always in motion. You are always changing. You are always in transition. When you do it enough and you see the outcomes, you start trusting yourself and start building that confidence and that intuition of like when to trust your gut and when that confidence starts to even build even higher.
You have to have a certain energy with the coach, I think, to respect them, to, want to do the work and follow through, but also like opening up. Like, I know one of the requirements that I sort of have or look for in clients, and you talk about this sales, it's just a conversation and it's really an interview for both of you. And it's like, I want somebody that is not going to shut down with feedback, like somebody who's going to be open to that because they understand that that is the way to grow. Like the person who wants to share what's going on, whether that's a celebration or a struggle or like even the smallest win, like I want to hear about it. Like I want somebody who's going to be, open with that. And so I love that.
All this and more in today's episode.
Welcome back to The Project. This is a episode with my former college teammate, Molly Connolly. She has started a personal life coaching business, and we've had a couple of great chats recently about the business startup, about life after being a college athlete. So I wanted to bring her on today to discuss all of what she has gone through to start that business and support people that are looking to achieve their goals after athletics, life after athletics, and how that applies. So thank you for joining, Molly.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much, Meg, for having me here. It's such a great opportunity, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. It's going to be fun.
So the name of your personal coaching business, I do want to just start with that real quick. It's Ipseity Coaching, right?
Ipseity Life Coaching.
Ipseity Life Coaching. Awesome. And what does Ipseity mean?
Ipseity means selfhood or individual. So basically focusing on your personal identity.
Yes. Such a crisis.
Yes, you're right. It is such a crisis, especially right now with how athletes have been transitioning out of college sports with COVID going on, or even just having a pause in athletics with the pandemic. So
yeah, I know. I thought about that a lot with like nationals and things this year. And I was like, oh my gosh, had I been training as hard as we trained to get to that point and have it almost like ripped away from you during this, I can't imagine how much that's affected students this year, especially the seniors.
Well, did you hear the story about how our old former team, they actually had to stop right after one relay?
Yeah,
So
I
couldn't even imagine being in the water, not realizing it was my last swim, and then it being called off.
Oh, it gives me chills, makes me sad. Okay, before we get into how you started Ipseity Life Coaching, I want to hear a little bit about some of your proudest moments that you have had. Yeah, let's just start there. What are some of the proudest moments that you've had? I love it. It's been like 7 years since you and I have really caught up as well. So it's just really cool to hear like what happened for both of us with life after athletics and college.
Oh yeah, for sure. So some of my proudest moments starting the business especially was the fact that I didn't think I was going to start it this early. And I went ahead and filed my LLC, ironically, in March of 2020, right before all this hit. It was just very weird coincidence. And I was going to be taking this slow for the next 3 years. And, within a few days, I decided to go all in as much as possible.
What was the reason for like wanting to go slow or like thinking that you needed to go slow or like, and then what was that deciding factor that was like, nope, now is the time?
Okay, so I was scared about starting business because I didn't know what I was going to be doing 100%. As entrepreneurs, we want to do something. We want to move forward. It's our passion. But at the same time, it's like, well, if I don't have XYZ set up, is it really a business? Or do I lead with my strengths? Or do I hire other people to help me? And so it becomes one of those moments where I'll just ease into it for 3 years. But then COVID hit and a friend of mine reached out and said, the people that you want to help need help now. What are you going to do about it? And I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to figure this out as I go. And that's how it's all started.
That resonates a lot because I remember I was kind of similar. Like I've been doing the fitness and nutrition, personal coaching COVID hit and I was wanting to get into more like energy balance and some life coaching stuff, like decision making was like what I was thinking at that time. I'm like, people just need help making decisions. Like I feel like I'm like in limbo right now. And yeah, hearing that at somebody, they were like, no matter what level you are at, if you've been getting into this type of work, like now is the perfect time. Whereas I think a lot of people were I think I was coming from a scarcity mindset and like now nobody's going to be open to this because jobs are at risk or whatever. And it's like, no, like right now is the time that people are needing that kind of, direction and support, and energy balance was a big thing that people were needing in the beginning. And so it was really cool to play with it at that time. But it's like, you're ready now. Like you've been preparing for this and it's time to jump in now.
Yep. You're as ready as you can be at every moment you start.
Yeah. That's amazing. So then that deciding factor was COVID was like kind of the big push.
Right. And then that's where I still had that, almost not the scarcity mindset, but the lack of confidence that I could get stuff done.
Yeah.
So another proud moment that you and I talked about on our last call was the fact that I was going to hire someone else to do my website. And I decided I was going to learn how to do Squarespace and read all their how-tos and get my website up and running by Labor Day. And I was only a few days late, but it was really satisfying to say that there was something I didn't know how to do, especially I'm also do digital marketing. So it was a little bit in my comfort zone, but I know how much it can be outside of my comfort zone to get that done.
Yeah. Have you found that the website, was that something that you needed in order to start your business?
Personally, with my background of things that I wanted to do and how I wanted to launch Ipseity, did include having that website complete, because my favorite thing is being able to have conversations like this. And then if someone's curious, then they can search for it online, go to the website and learn more. I'm one of those that likes to do as much research as possible before I, make a purchase. So that's a lot of similar customer behavior. So that's why a new website for me was going to be very important.
Yeah. That's something that kind of on the fence for some people, like, is it important to have the website straight away? Like, are people going there or not? But I know for me, it was like thinking of how sophisticated of a website, maybe it was what I needed to start it. And yeah, it's like one of the last things that I think, like, how sophisticated, like, you're great, like an information page or like a landing page of some kind. But that's awesome that you were able to build out your own website and only a few days short of the goal.
Well, it still took like a month and a half, let's be honest, when I started thinking about it. But also with the pandemic and people not going into work, that meant that people were more likely to be online. So that was another opportunity. Most digital marketing saw a crazy increase. So I knew that if I was to get my website up, there would be a bigger chance of people being able to find me during the summer.
Okay. And you talked a little bit about your top values and making a difference, and that being part of one of your like proudest moments of being able to support your clients. Can you tell a little bit more about that?
Yeah, actually, this would probably be the biggest reason why I started pursuing life coaching. I actually had a few years back, had some people come up to me and say, if it wasn't for you, I would have never done this. And it might have been a former alumni that said, if you hadn't come and coached during this period, I was going to quit swimming. I had another person come and say, if it wasn't you teaching me about X, Y, and Z, I would have never gone to college. And it was one of those things that you just couldn't believe that you made that big of an impact. And that's how I started realizing making a difference was a very big value to me, because it was very uplifting and joyful and just made me feel like I had a bigger purpose. And so when I found life coaching, I knew that it was that direction, but now it's even more satisfying. Like when I work with a client and they have a breakthrough, and at the end of like all of our sessions, or even at the end of the session, they say, thank you. I didn't know that's what was bothering me, or I can't believe we worked through this. This is going to be so life-changing for me. And that's what actually keeps me so interested in wanting to do this every day.
I love that. I don't know how you go through helping I know you talked about like core values being part of your process that you do with your clients or students or whatever you call them. And that's something that, I go through as well. And so I like talking about those proudest moments. And it's cool to hear that this one showed up for you as a proudest moment, because I think a lot of times it's those things, that those proudest moments. And when you look at what helped you achieve that, like what was the value or the characteristic or something, in place during that time, like that's a good indicator of that core value. So what
lights you up is definitely helpful in figuring that out.
Yeah. I love that. So how did you get to those high points? Like what were some of the low points that you had and what took you getting to that point? Because you didn't just start off there.
No. I mean, that would have been fun, right? Just starting off there. But of course, that's why we have to learn. Well, first of all, not knowing how to even start a business was kind of scary and intimidating. And what got me through that is knowing that I'm not the first person starting a small business, that there are resources out there. There's people I know, such as like yourself, like you've started numerous businesses and enjoyed them throughout the process. And it's one of those where it's like, I can do this. Other people have too. I just need to figure out what direction and what way I want to do that.
Yeah. I think that's a big deterrent sometimes when we talk about like, I know the focus that we wanted today was a little bit of like what blocks you from achieving your goals and things. And I think that's something as people look at it, like, especially life coaching or fitness or health coaching, and people look at it and they're like, oh, there's so many people doing it. Is there really, does the world need another life coach or health and fitness coach? And what's your answer to that?
Well, first of all, there's 7.1 how many million billion people that are on this earth. And how you show up might resonate with someone more than they would resonate with me, and vice versa. So even though that there are different life coaches, fitness programs, nutritionists, it's not just what they can provide. It's also their energy, their personality, how well you click, how you communicate, and how that person can support you through your challenges and through your goals. And that is really what makes me realize that I'm not perfect fit for everyone and not everybody's a perfect fit for me. But when we do find those clients that I like to call soulmate clients, it is just, the connection is so real. You're like, I want to coach them again tomorrow. But you know that you have to like, let there be time for them to work on what they want. And then when you come back, it's just this like uplifting moment. You're so energized and ready to go with it to meet the client where they are. So
I love that. Yeah. It's when you talk about that 7 billion people on earth, we all have different upbringings, different DNA, different experiences, yet we walk around like, what makes me unique? Like what makes me special?
And that's like, another thing to think about too. Like I coach someone and she is a twin and she is also a former athlete. And she was having this moment where she couldn't understand why her twin or friends didn't see things the same way as she was. And I kept on reminding her that, you are completely seeing the world through one set of lenses, and your sister and your friends are too. You guys, even if you're in the same moment, you have different experiences because you've had smaller or slightly significant differences in the way you maybe experienced another situation or even different friendships. And how that happens, it just gives you more layers to your lens that makes you more unique as you go.
So true. I don't know if you're a fan of Don Miguel Ruiz. He writes some really great books, The 4 Agreements and the 3 Questions. Yeah. And it's funny because in the 3 Questions, I just finished reading this month, and he talks about memory as a tool, in like relation to body sensations and going with intuition and understanding. But it's funny that the brain does perceive things in its own way. And that's why like siblings will remember events differently, like from your childhood or growing up. Cause I remember like sharing stories, like with family, and you're like, that's not what happened at all. Like,
yeah, I was actually really mad. I was not even happy. Like,
yeah. So it's great. Like you bring that up, like, yes, you're a twin and, maybe some of the same, experiences and upbringing, but how you perceived those is definitely unique to each person. I love that. Yeah. What else was part of the process that got you to the high points?
Okay. So then these 2 are like pretty recent, to be honest. I will say, in probably the last few months, I had this moment where I thought my niche didn't need me. And I was so focused on finding my niche that I wasn't allowing the niche to come to me. And so I decided I wanted to interview people that were close to my niche. And so this is how we even had our conversation. I wanted to talk to former athletes or those that, whether the former athletes were 40 years old, 30 years old, or even just 22, 23, just out of college, and hear what they needed. And that was when I realized that, yes, former athletes definitely are my niche, but it was the lack of self-awareness maybe that some didn't realize that they might need someone to help them through that transition. So you and I had this conversation when we were out of college. Would we have thought if we needed a life coach? And as I've asked friends that are in similar age groups right now, they think, oh yeah, I went through something and I'm fine. but they realized that they transitioned from being an athlete to all of a sudden another identity, and then another identity and another identity, whether that was a graduate student who then all of a sudden became a wife, who all of a sudden became a mom, and now they're in one job and it's just nothing feels like it connects anymore. And then even the younger generation right now is extremely mindful, extremely self-aware, which we discussed even more of the thought of how mental health is now becoming so much more of a topic and not so taboo, and people can talk about it openly, that this younger generation realizes, hey, I have something that's bothering me. I don't know what it is. Or if they do know what it is, they just don't know how to transition their life after being an athlete for 15, 20 years into then what we like to call the real world of going and sitting, in a cubicle or working the 8 to 5 that we might not be accustomed to. So,
yeah. And it does. It resonates, like all those transitions that you're talking about. And I know, like, I filled that void of competition and things going right into like, CrossFit and athletics. And then that was great until I got an injury, and then that was taken away from me. And then it was like, okay, now I'm no longer like the athlete. Like, it wasn't even Meg the swimmer. It was Meg the athlete or CrossFitter. And then that was taken away. And that was a big spiral in like confidence and identity shift of like, who am I and what do I do now if I can't do these, physical achievements, right? Everything was so physical and outside. It like really took a lot for me to start going inside and going back to like those values and seeing like, okay, so what is life like? And if this 9 to 5 is right for me, and, like, what do I want to be doing? Where do I want to be going? That's a huge, huge crisis point.
Yeah. Athletes don't realize how often that they stay in this performance mindset.
Yeah.
So even though you might be within the competition, you understand that it's a performance, or that you are training and you understand it's a performance, but then that's also academics. You're performing, you're trying to get that certain grade, or you're performing outside of your sport where you want to make sure you're making other people happy by doing what they would like, because we also come from that people pleasing mindset of wanting to please the coach, wanting to please our teammates, wanting to please our family. And so that also gets into this, like what I like to call the hamster wheel, is what's next hamster wheel. So once you're done with competition, okay, what's next? And who do I need to please and make happy versus self-internalizing? Like, does this make me happy? And how to reflect on that and say, what did I learn from my past experience to know what does and doesn't make me happy, light up? Or is this relationship, friendship actually worth my time? And all those other questions that come with it. So sorry, that just dove into a whole nother aspect of the performance mindset and how we can move that in a different direction.
It is interesting because coaching a performance mindset is very different from coaching development in that aspect. And so that is, I never paired together like that people pleasing of thinking like the coach and the teammates, and all of that going on is a great insight. Yeah.
It's a little difficult too. Once you figure that part out, you're like, oh, the person that I need to make happy every day is myself.
Yeah.
So what do I like? That's how that whole identity situation starts to get explored.
Yeah. I've got to hang out with me the rest of my life. Do I like me?
What do I like about me and what do I don't? Okay. I like sleeping in now. So, and enjoying my coffee.
Right. Oh man. Yeah. I think I learned a lot of that traveling alone, like just being with myself there, and kind of being forced to be okay with just sitting with yourself and being in those places that make you feel really stupid at times. And you're like, oh my God, you feel totally lost. But then when you get through it and you achieve something, you're like, yes, it gives you a sense of progress and almost like a small goal or performance that you're like, all right, I did it.
That confidence, and then like trusting in yourself, and then relying on that intuition that you talked about earlier. So that builds upon that.
Big intuition. Yeah. Oh, I love that. Can you talk a little bit about being afraid to sell? That was something that you had mentioned as kind of like a low point, or what you had learned.
Yes. So not everybody is great at being certain parts of being an entrepreneur. And some people, maybe that's finances. Other people, maybe that's marketing. For me, it's sales for sure. Because one thing that I didn't like about some parts of marketing was like forcing the sale. And it was always feeling very difficult for me. And until I figured out that it was violating one of my core values, which is authenticity, I realized that selling was going to be difficult for me, because I wanted it to come from a sense of passion and purpose versus saying, hi, guess what? I have this product. Would you like to participate? What I realized is that in order to just have a conversation with someone and hear more about their story, that's allowed me to just start discussing life coaching and actually Ipseity life coaching in general, and how I have helped others. And at that point, I don't need to sell if they're very interested, or if they are, curious of learning more. This is where the website comes in, where they can then just go to my website or even social media and see like what type of person I am, what type of things I've offer, and then reach out if they're interested in more, or we just keep the conversation going and see how that goes.
Yeah. I think that's a huge piece to overcoming, is just realizing, and you mentioned this before, is realizing that you're not for everybody. And again, it goes back to there's 7 billion people here. Like, you're not going to be for everybody. But in the beginning, I think early in a coaching phase, I can speak from, fitness and nutrition, lifestyle. It's like believing that you can help everybody. Right? Like, no, I've got this process and it works. And like, I can help you too. And you. But it's, really you're not for everybody. You talk about that energy. You have to have a certain energy with a coach, I think, to respect them, to, want to do the work and follow through, but also like opening up. Like, I know one of the requirements that I sort of have or look for in clients, and you talk about this sales, it's just a conversation, and it's really an interview for both of you. And it's like, I want somebody that is not, not going to shut down with feedback, like somebody who's going to be open to that because they understand that that is the way to grow. Like the person who wants to share what's going on, whether that's a celebration or a struggle or like even the smallest win, like I want to hear about it. Like I want somebody who's going to be, open with that. And so I love that sales call is not like, here's how much this thing is, and I believe it can help you. It's like, what is going on? Can I help you? And also these personality characteristics for you both to find out, is that going to work? And I think it's just giving information, right, of what you do and what you already know about. It's not, I know that's, especially in the fitness industry where I was coming from, it was CrossFit mentality, which was kind of like at a battle with like Globo gyms, right? And Globo gyms, like trainers there, they're heavily trained in sales, right? It's sell the memberships, sell the packages, and it's kind of less about results, or it has been in the beginning. And in CrossFit, it was, very much on like results and things, but like there wasn't this sales component. So we always kind of viewed sales as like sleazy,
Yeah, like the car salesman, right?
Yeah, like just had this gross feeling about it of like trying to sell people on things, but really there is a place for both of that together, but it's not like in the sleazy way. And like you say, it is authentic when you speak true to who you're helping and what you can do, and recognizing how far you can get somebody. Like there's somebody that you might get onto a call with and you're like, I'm sorry, I can't take you to that place.
Well, have you ever done that where you've taken on someone because you really wanted to help them, but you know that they might not be a good fit?
Yeah.
And then you're like halfway through this. Like for me, one of them is growth. So I want to make sure that they are very interested in growing and they are committed to the growth that they want to invest in themselves. Yeah. Because I can sit here all day, every day and point you in the direction by saying, hey, let's talk about this, like have a teachable moment, see what they think about it, and let them take the work and do it, on their own time. Because as you know, the work happens in between the sessions, because that's what the client is going to be doing, and helping hold them accountable and, celebrating when they've done something fantastic that they enjoy or they hit their goal. But if they say, oh, I really want to work on this, and, they take the session, and in between they say, oh, I just decided I didn't want to do it. Or you explore that spot. But if that keeps on being consistent, that's where it gets me a little like, maybe we aren't a good fit. Maybe you need someone else that meets you at a different area of your life. And that can be difficult to have that conversation too.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just doesn't feel good. Like going into those sessions, like again, your body sensations and your intuition kind of lets you know, like, how you feel going into that session and how you feel afterwards is a big indicator of like, well, did I call in the right person with this one, or did I, take on the right project? But it's recognizing, how far you can take somebody and at what level.
And thankfully we do have those moments because they allow us to learn too and grow.
Yeah. So what helped bring you from some of those, lower points or lessons up to those proud moments?
Well, I definitely will have to say, taking this leap into life coaching, I really wanted to make sure that I had a support system. And this kind of goes back into the former athlete or athlete mentality of people pleasing. So for me, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to anger anybody or disappoint anyone. And so I personally had to work on that. And so I had a coach that we worked through that as a goal for myself. And because coaches have coaches, like that's how that works the best for them. And so I was able to realize that I was trying to people please. Once again, having my own ICA, I should know that. But I wanted to make sure that support system was there. And after having those conversations, I realized that those were just my assumptions, interpretations. They weren't going to be upset, or they weren't going to think differently because all of a sudden I wanted to do this. My father, especially, like,
okay. Yeah.
He is a person where he's like, one of his beliefs is you work up the corporate ladder. And nowadays that doesn't necessarily make sense. But back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, it did. So coming to terms with that and knowing that his opinion is great and so is mine, but this is my life and I'm going to live it the way I would like to. It took a little bit of confidence building I needed to build for myself, and realizing he still supported me allowed me to then have that better sense of, wow, where is my support system? It actually is a lot more around me than I thought, and able to share the big wins or share the moments that were low and still have the support of my family and friends has always been fantastic. And I see that too with my clients. When they have people that support them, they even see even bigger leaps in growth.
Yeah.
So
believe that people truly do want the best for you. And when they see you doing it, it's very similar with my dad was disappointed, I guess, when I left, my safe job that had the 401k, all the benefits and everything. And I left it to go to the Middle East to start a fitness business, which just screamed risk to everybody. They're like, what? The Middle East fitness? What are you doing? And it was funny. After he had retired, he ended up, it was probably after I'd been out there for 2 years, and he had mentioned that. And he was just like, you know what? You are doing it absolutely right. Cause he worked behind a desk for 30 years and got sick. And, and then in retirement, it was kind of that loss of purpose as well. And what am I doing? And he was getting sicker, even though he retired in his dream place, on the lake, doing what he loved. And that was kind of the inspiration for helping people near that retirement age, which is where I started personal coaching in Kuwait, of helping people through that and that aging process of finding that passion and purpose again after you've left that job that you had to show up to for 30 years to please the family, to, please everybody else.
Pay the bills.
Yeah. Yeah. That's having that support system is huge, but not everybody, but I would say that I think, like I said, people do want the best for you. And I think that there is some of that. It's what risk they're probably comfortable with, where that comes across, in their advice to you or direction to you, because it's not something that feels good inside of them. But trusting those body sensations is.
Oh yeah. That little risk taking is fantastic to feel though, because that's the moment right before you push yourself outside your comfort zone. And that's where the real growth happens, as you and I both know. So yes, that would probably be one of them. Another was, with that, learning to trust myself.
Yeah.
And taking that intuition that you've talked about, and those moments where the energy feels, how do I even want to put it? It just encompasses, you just are surrounded by this force of positive energy, and you're so focused on what you're doing that you lose track of time even. So those moments, the flow state. Yes.
Yeah.
And realizing that those moments were the ones that allowed me to gain confidence and trust myself more when I'm about to enter that moment. I'm like, oh, this is exactly where I need to be. This is exactly what I need to be doing. And that allowed me to keep serving former athletes with their transitions, because that just kept lighting up my passion.
Yeah. You're totally meant to do this. I just remember, I think we figured it out. You were a senior when I was a freshman.
I think we something like that.
Something like that. It may have been a year and a half or something overlap, but yeah. And I just remember even after you had graduated though, you were always present. You were always paying attention. You were always paying attention. There was always still a little bit of Molly showing up to congratulate the team, or just we knew you were always still paying attention to it. And so it's just so cool what you're doing right now. It definitely fits. I think it's always been a part of what you were meant to be doing, even though, you didn't start off doing it right away after college. It takes some of those ups and downs to figure out where you are meant to be.
Oh yeah. Well, and thanks a lot, Megan, for saying that, because, as I mentioned to you, and you mentioned this too, when you left, everyone was like, what is she doing? But I was more like, what is she doing? Because that's awesome. I wish I could get outside of my comfort zone that much to be like, I'm going to leave and go to a whole new country where I don't know how to speak the language. I'm still not in that zone. But you are definitely probably one of the first people in my life, acquaintance, friend, whatnot, that has taken such a big leap and keeps on taking these leaps because you know where to pivot, as well as okay, this might not work for me, or, I just feel that I'm done growing here and I want to grow over there now. A lot of people stay forced after they do one big risk. They just stay there because they think, if I risk again, what am I going to lose or whatnot? Yeah. So yeah, you are just constantly what did I say before on our last call? the like certified, I don't remember. I'll have to find it, but it was just basically like, you are just such an amazing risk taker in such a good way that it's inspiring pretty much. So
that's so awesome to hear. Like, I mean, sometimes those risks make me feel like I want to throw up, but they generally lead me to the right thing.
Yeah.
But that is, speaking of courage risk taking for me, it was funny when I went through my proudest achievements, and that was something, risk taking came up a lot of like what got me to these things. And I had boiled that down to courage as my core value.
Ooh.
And my definition for courage is that risk taking develops that trust in myself and my natural problem solving skills.
Mm-hmm.
And that I'm willing and able to take those risks so that I can open up to new ideas, relationships, and experiences courageously. So that is, one of my core values. So it's nice to hear that that's come across, or people like think of that when they think of me. Thank you.
Oh yeah. And that's been going on for how long? How many years? Like, you left for Kuwait like 5 years ago?
2014. And I came back in 2020. Gosh. Yeah. Or 2019. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay. Gosh, time flies.
It does.
Sorry, my estimation there was way off.
No, I know. Some people think I'm still over there. It's funny.
That's great.
It's hilarious. Yeah. But it is. It's, and that's probably something you encounter a lot of, like, I mean, from the athlete perspective, right? There's that level of confidence and that performance and self-assurance in that way. But why is it that we struggle so much to believe the best of what others believe in us, right? Like for me to hear that I was, you talk about making a difference and people telling you that, oh my gosh, I never thought about this way. You're making a difference. I remember the first time somebody told me when they were asked to describe me in a word and they said influential, and that made me panic because I was like, oh my God, like what? Like it made me uncomfortable, of like, holy shit, like I'm influencing something, like you to do something or to, take it. It seemed like a lot of responsibility. And that made me, like panic a little bit of like, oh my God, eyes are on me. And what am I influencing? And what kind of like power and responsibility that is, it made me panic. But like performance wise, confidence and all that kind of stuff. It's like so self-assured that I could do that. But it's so hard to believe these positive things that other people say about us.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's that negative bias situation where we always see, sadly, our brain looks for the negative most of the time. And so it's having to retrain the brain, not only to see the positive in things, but to learn how to see the positives in ourselves. And that can take a lot more work than people realize. But the more you surround with yourself with others that see that in you, it becomes so much easier to let that be another layer of your personality and how you show up every day.
So true. So true. What's that quote? Like you're the average of the 5 people that you spend most time with. And there really is some truth to that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Like I sit back and I even think, and just because you've moved around and done enough transition work, you could think back, like if you did 3 years together, like the people that you were around when we were swimming, the 5 people you were around after that, like for 3 years, and then move it along. Some of those friendships and relationships stay with you and others don't. And that's not necessarily a bad thing either, because it just shows the growth and the transitions between relationships and support systems, which sometimes people are also afraid to do. But that allows you to keep growing and being with the people that support you the best.
Yeah. I've always tried to view that as like a change in relationship versus like a loss of a relationship. Right. Yeah. And that growth being part of it. All of that. So I think like a lot of what this boils down to is, some of these low points and these limiting beliefs and having that struggle of believing the best in ourselves. Those are the things that can block us from achieving big goals, right? Or starting it. So like you telling yourself like, oh, I need to, go slow over these next 3 to 5 years. And that ended up, not being the truth. I did want to, incorporate today of like, what are some of the issues that you've experienced in your coaching or in your personal life that block people from achieving those goals, even when they've taken the necessary steps?
So the thing that I see the most with high achievers or former athletes, especially, we are so ingrained that this is the right way to do it. And if it keeps failing me, I'm just going to keep doing it and doing it and doing it until I break through.
Practice makes perfect, right? Is that the...
Right.
Yeah.
Kind of like practice makes perfect, but maybe what the action you're taking isn't the action you need to be taking. So it's not stopping and reflecting back and being like, how is this serving me? Is it really moving the needle? And then maybe figuring out how to pivot and shift. Mm-hmm. So I was always thinking I needed to have this many clients or this thing done first before I could do X, Y, and Z. And with starting a business, everything comes at you at different rates. And you have to be able to be flexible and take those in. And changing my mindset from being a very structured person, which when we started talking about this and you're like, yeah, I love the podcast, how it's just going to flow. We're going to have discussion. My structured brain was like, I don't know how I'm going to handle that. And I'm like, we're going to handle that just fine. But that's what I'm saying is that most high achievers and former athletes, like we are so structured that sometimes our structure blocks us. So for me, that was a big one of learning how to still have a flexible structure, creating that on my own and what that looks like.
I love that. From a movement perspective and a coach that I had, this was something we talked a lot about. It was like they'd given us direction to move across the room with your hands and feet always touching the floor. So like hands and feet always had to be, and you had to figure out how to move across. And so you get people that just kind of like figured out like one thing and then just would do that same thing like all the way across. But then as soon as they started like incorporating like more rules into the game or like moving from one side of the room to the other, and now whichever hand or foot is like, you know, closest to this wall has to be the first to move, you know, or something like that, or it has to be go in front of all the other hands and feet on the floor. Like once they started imposing all these different rules on it, like then you saw this creativity happen a little bit more. So you talk about this like structure and being like firm in your intention, I guess, right? Or the goal, but being kind of flexible in that approach. And you saw all these different like ways that people could move across the room given the same set of rules, but there was like 10 different ways that you could actually go about it. So I always think about that with my business as well. It's like firm in the intention, like what am I doing here, but very flexible in that approach. And so when you talk about, of like these rules that we get imposed of like, you have to have X amount of clients, or you have to have all, you know, the website and tens of other, you know, this many people following you or whatever, all these other rules that you impose on yourself before you can go to that next level, or you have to post like X amount of times a day, or you have to charge, you know, start charging at this or something. It's, you get really agile and flexible in your approaches when you can let go of some of those rules. The same thing with like food and nutrition. I think about that with the dieting cycles that I went through for years. It was like, I had to list out all those rules that I had adopted, you know, some from swimming and competition, you know, it's like pace of how I was eating, like hurry up and eat before your next race, hurry up and eat before your next class. Hurry up. You know, it was like, everything was for speed. But then also like, you know, you have to eat within 30 minutes of finishing your workout, or you have to eat every 3 hours, or your meal has to have, you know,
protein and this. Yeah,
all that kind of stuff. It's when you can let go of that.
Well, and I like how you just gave that visualization of how people moved across the room. It was a better way of showing that other than that one graph where it's like, this is the upline of like how it's supposed to work for you. And instead it's like a bunch of like crazy scribbles. And then you're like, boom, there you are. So it's the same thing, but I really love that of how people moving across the room and how that just everybody just sees then how to do it differently on what works best for them.
Yeah, that's how it goes. What are some of the other things that you think block people from achieving their goals when they've taken those necessary steps?
It could be 3 things. And I know that I brought this up before with our other discussion of it could be self-awareness, self-acceptance, and competence. And those 3 play a lot together. So with that first one that I was discussing about the very structured routine, and I wasn't very self-aware and I wasn't realizing that it was actually holding me back. So having that self-awareness of saying, okay, let's try a flexible structure, or let's move outside my comfort zone just a little, like just that little spot. Don't have to go jump off the ledge, but just like get a little bit closer.
Dip a toe.
Dip the toe in the water and realize it's freezing cold, and, you know, ease yourself into it or jump all in. And that's where once you get that self-awareness, it's then having the self-acceptance of this is where I am and that's okay. And sometimes that is difficult for people to do depending on the goal. As a high achiever, we are also, and athletes, we just want perfection, right? Practice makes perfect. Like you brought up a little bit before, like that is what we want. Well, a famous author that we both very much enjoy, Marie Forleo, is like, progress is better than perfection. And when I heard that, I was like, that just blew my mind. Like, that's exactly what I needed to hear when I read her book was it last year? Everything is figure outable. Like that was very helpful in knowing that where I am is still in progress. There is no end point. It's not when I have this, I will do this. There is no such thing. You are always in motion. You are always changing. You are always in transition. So progress is better than perfection is going to get you through. So having that self-acceptance of that leads you then to doing the risk taking that you talked about of like, okay, yeah, I'm going to go do this, or I said this, oh, that makes me feel uncomfortable. But when you do it enough and you see the outcomes, you start trusting yourself and start building that confidence and that intuition of like when to trust your gut and when that confidence starts to even build even higher.
Yeah, that progress over perfection. I had that like blasted on my computer screen, on my phone screen, in my journals, like everywhere, because I was definitely that person too. It's like, I can't show anybody what I'm working on or do anything until it's perfect. Like they have to see the end result. And what I've learned is when you show them a little bit of that mess behind it and like building something out, that's way more relatable than like having all your shit together.
Yeah. And like, even just like jumping back to that moment where you were told that you were like influential.
Yeah.
And now when we think about social media, about people being influencers, and the more this has come out and people know this, but they still just get stuck in seeing it, that what people post on social media is like a fraction of what their real life looks like. And that might even be filtered, and that might even be photoshopped. You have no idea what their real life looks like if they're influencing all the time.
Yeah.
So being real is way better.
Yeah, totally. Way more relatable.
And it's more fun.
It is. Yeah. The self-assurance and perfectionism. I never really like paired those two words together, but I think you totally hit it with that. And the other thing you said was focusing on the end result.
Oh yeah.
And like putting a huge focus on that you forget about, enjoying the process and being able to pivot along the way, right? When you get so blocked in tunnel vision of like that thing, and then you get that thing, and then you're either like burnt out by that time because, you were so rigid in how you got there, but it also can make us feel like impatient, and we want this like instant gratification.
Yep.
Of getting there, that it makes it really hard to show up day after day when you don't get it right away.
Yeah, that internal motivation is really hard to keep going, especially like if you think back, just even how structured it was for us swimming. Like every year we would have this many swim meets. This would be conference and this would be nationals. And so then once that was done, you do it again, and then you do it again all the way through your senior year. And then when it was over, it's like, well, there's no more swim meets. There's no more conference. There's no more nationals. So, okay, well, I'll figure out what's next and make these goals. But then once again, you're not enjoying the process. Yeah. You're not enjoying those moments. And sometimes, I don't know about you, but like when I think back to swimming, there are moments where I'm like so happy that I enjoyed the moment and took it in versus being so hyper focused on, okay, I want to make this time, or I want to place here at this meet, conference, nationals, whatnot. It was always wanting to just, maybe I want to cheer on a teammate. I want to be there for them. Being in that process and able to carry that over into like the next part of your life can be very difficult. So yeah, focusing on the end result sometimes can be very tricky, and learning how to enjoy that process can be even trickier.
Yeah. So what are some action steps, or you talked a little bit about the reflection of the shoulds, and some action steps of being able to like get past all this and how to start achieving those goals or getting past some of these blocks that maybe prevent us.
Yeah. So I brought up earlier too about like the dad situation where I wanted to be supported. So when I think back to that, I think I should do this or I should do that. And I had a coach that told me, don't should on yourself.
Yeah.
And so what we were discussing, and this is also Dr. Brené Brown talks a lot about it, it's shame. Should is the equal to shame.
Yeah.
Need to is a cousin of should, because that's also a need to is coming from a different set of limiting beliefs, assumptions, interpretations, and sometimes even an inner critic that has been built up over time based off of what other people told you have to do, have to be. So reflecting on the shoulds, whenever you're having a conversation, be like, oh, I should take out the trash. Like even something that's simple is like, is it because it's full? Is it because it smells? Or is it because your mom told you have to take it out every Monday?
Right.
And I know that's a really simple example, but when you start feeling that sense of guilt that you're not doing what you're supposed to, that's a good moment to stop and reflect and say, how is this really serving me? And if you can sit back and say it doesn't serve you, then you can write your next movement. You can write your next goal. So one, for example, was I need to have this much in my bank account in order to leave my job.
Ooh, that's been a big one for me too. Yeah.
I'm leaving my job on Friday next week. Yeah. And it's not about a number in my bank account.
Exactly.
It's because there's a new transition going on in my life, and that's just what it has to be. So it's getting over, is that a people pleasing moment? Is that a personal conflict? And I know a big one for a lot of women that I coach is, I should be married by now. I should have kids by now. And I'm like, who told you that? Where'd that come from? And they'll be like, well, my mom got married when she was 25 and she had me by the time she was 30. And be like, well, how does that serve you in your life right now?
Right.
Was your mom working? Did your mom go to college? Did your mom already have other kids? Like, what other responsibilities? Like, why are you comparing yourself to your mom?
Yeah.
And digging into those shoulds to realize that maybe those shoulds just don't serve you anymore. And that'll allow you to have a wider net of creating goals and solutions to help you get through any challenge.
Yeah. I love going through that. What I was coached on, it called like that inherited legacy.
Yes.
And personal legacy.
Yeah.
And it's like, what are those, again, beliefs, characteristics, all those things that you've inherited, good or bad, from I usually start with mom and dad or whoever raised you.
Right.
But it's cool. You can do it with like society, religion, social media.
Yeah.
With my coach is like, what have you adopted and inherited as, core beliefs from those? And going through and literally like crossing off what no longer serves you and what is something that you want to keep. Like circle the things that you want to keep. Like I can think with my mom and, some confidence like issues. And those are things that I kind of just adopted to be like aware of in my own body because I heard my mom constantly complain about it.
Right.
And so it got me, self-conscious about some of the things. But then I can think of like other characteristics of like her, loving to host and feed people. And it's like my first business was a food prep company. So I through like just wanting to give people, food and make them feel better was always like her remedy. So a lot of that came through in there. But yeah, absolutely. I love that question of how is this really serving me, and just trusting that best for you.
Oh yeah. Well, and even I think one of that some of us grew up with is like money doesn't grow on trees.
Yeah.
Like even those little sayings that maybe other people, like maybe, my dad told me that one all the time. And just like people, money is not scarce. Yeah. It is always out there. It's an exchange of energy too. Mm-hmm. So like when people, pay for the food that they eat, like feeling grateful for receiving that food and giving the money for what the people value, like that is also another way of thinking of exchanging that energy, but also breaking that limiting belief that money doesn't grow on trees. So figuring out different concepts of how that works best for you, how you want to figure that out is always a fun challenge that I also sometimes pair with the shoulds.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to think before money was actually a thing, right? It was like, there were different things that were exchanged. Like you determined what that value was. Like you could trade animals or you could trade, herbs or food or whatever it was, but it was that exchange. So that's been a big one, I think, especially in times of COVID, maybe with like job losses and things like that, where people are kind of coming from that scarce place, but understanding like there's not less of it available right now. It's just, it's exchanging.
Maybe it's different. Yeah. Maybe it's not the same job that you were in 6 months ago. And maybe it's possibly getting a little outside your comfort zone to apply for a job where maybe you only have 50% of the requirements. And maybe you never know, you might get that job.
Right. So what's the action step with all this? Do you have people like just write out what some of those beliefs are, or the shoulds that they tell themselves and then just ask themselves that question, is this really serving me? Or what's the action that people could take away to process some of that? So
the biggest one is starting with the reflection, maybe even just journaling a little bit and figuring out, like, you don't say shoulds all the time, but if you can think of a few off the top of your head, writing out the should, where did that come from? When did that show up in my life? If you can really get back that far, or if it was just recent, who gave you that interpretation, that assumption, limiting belief, and how is that affecting you right now? And just basically almost like journalism, like it's asking all the W's and the how.
Yeah.
And, at the end, then like, how is this serving me? Is it serving me? And if it is serving you, fantastic. How is that making your life better? How is that impacting your life? And just going through the process so you can then develop that self-awareness and go from there. So that's how that all starts. And once again, reflection is the biggest part that we as human beings even don't take the time to really do that instead of moving on to the next. So if you can start digging into little things from the past or where those beliefs came from, you'll have a greater sense of awareness that will help you lead to the self-acceptance, building the confidence, doing things like our coach told us, like trusting the process of how things go. And, everything does happen for a reason. And showing how that comes out is through reflection mostly.
Yeah. And that goes like what you mentioned before, like that work really happens in that in between the coaching call time, because that is the big reflection time, right?
Reflection and taking action too. So like, let's say they did reflect, but they don't take any action, meaning like they don't answer the questions or they don't put it to use because those shoulds will pop up. And if I had a client where we were halfway through a call and she was talking about, oh, these shoulds came up and da-da-da. And then we were at the end and she said a should, and she's paused and she rephrased it.
Oh, good.
And reframed the statement because she was aware that she just did a should. And that's what she didn't need to do. She wanted to move forward and replaced it with something else.
Yeah. Way to catch herself in the moment.
Yeah. I'm like, wow, this is working. This is fantastic for her.
That's awesome. So cool. So if people wanted to learn more about what you do, or if there's any, former athletes out there that are kind of in that identity crisis and, looking how to move forward or shoulding all over themselves, what do you do and how do they get in touch with you?
Yep. So a little bit more deeper into what I do, I'll help former athletes transition out of sport with confidence and clarity. And there's 5 steps that I have listed on my website. But the biggest one is like doing an athlete identity review, working through what's blocking you and helping you figure out your values so that we can move you forward in the life that you are desiring, that maybe you don't even know you desire yet. But where they can find me most is on Instagram at Ipseity Life Coaching, or even on my website where they can find a lot more information about it. And slowly but surely, I'm going to be building up my presence more on Facebook and Instagram. So
yeah, love it. That's so awesome. Thank you so much for joining.
No problem. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It was really fun to not only catch up, but to talk about our coaching styles and our fun experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to have you on as a guest speaker with my next round of clients if you're up for it. I just think
that'll be fun. I mean, yeah, we can figure that out.
Yeah, I think that would be great. Oh, thank you so much, Molly. We'll definitely tag all of your Instagram and website and everything in the show notes for people to go to be able to reach out to you and hear more.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Meg. This was great.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it, please head over to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. You can also find us on Instagram at The Project Thank You, and join us next time.